years come and go fast, and my wife and I kind of judge them by signing dates and significant events, and Holly doesn't consider the season being over until after today is over, so August till February 4th is basically the cycle that we put this into. My coaches worked really hard in this particular season of recruiting, and I think they did an outstanding job in finding the needs and meeting the needs that we had for this particular class and this particular team. The focus this year was not nearly as much junior college emphasis. There has been depth that has been established. There's been position-specific recruiting that has been established. And there's an identity and a format and a blueprint that's also been basically established. So what we were looking for is to add young, exceptional talent that belongs at BYU and is qualified to BYU into existing holes that we had, fill those, and move forward. We always include the missionaries that have not been with our program yet as something we acknowledge as part of a class, and so there will be the players that were announced this morning, and then there'll be a handful of others each year that are added to that sometimes are forgotten about as they signed and then went on missions. As I looked at this particular class, we had needs at the offensive line to fill, and those would be play first positions for freshmen. So this would be 3 freshmen at least that could play first before missions and fill those slots. That would fit in nicely to our rotation of offensive linemen coming and going from missions. We certainly had quarterback needs that we think we met very, very well, as we have not only Cody Wilstead and Bo Hodge coming. Bo will be here, Cody will be going on his mission, but we have Tanner Mangum returning from his mission, and so we're very comfortable with what we did at quarterback. There's another player within our recruiting class in Micah Simon that played quarterback for a state championship team in Texas that we're planning on playing him at wide receiver. But when you watch his film, you'll notice that he's playing quarterback and he plays it really, really well as a dual threat type of quarterback that has great speed. So that addresses the quarterback position. At running back, we also added depth as well as talent when we consider now Squally Canada and Charles West. So that handles the running back spots. At wide receiver, Akile Davis and Micah Simon, we think do a nice job at filling in that particular spot. And then really, if you look offensively, with Taysom then coming back and Jamal coming back, we have a strong offense returning. If you say now what were the needs and what did we accomplish defensively, if you can flip that slide really quick, it'll help me as a reminder. From a defensive perspective, there's always a need to continue to reinforce our offensive front, especially at nose tackle and nose tackle types that are fast, athletic, quick, and strong. We did that in a number of ways. The easiest one to identify, Tavita Maunga, he came from the same high school as Tyler Cook from a year ago, about 330 pounds currently, but he helps us at nose tackle, and when in doubt, we prefer nose tackle types in 3-4 defense. But we also added a nose tackle. Well, we're not sure he's a nose tackle yet. At 6'7", 410 pounds, individual that doesn't know the rules of the game, has never played the game. We sent recruiters to Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, and New Zealand 2 years ago. And Coach Kafusi found Motakaya Longi. I watched him playing a pickup game of basketball since they don't play football there. And at that, he was heavier then. He's now a stealthy 4'10", but thought he was light on his feet and could play football. And so when you talk about defensive line and then adding to that David Louis, we've added size, nose tackle types, and strength at the defensive line spot. We've added secondary help with not only Zane Anderson, but Trevor Brent, but Riley Burt, but Dion Lake, and Eric Takanaka. And we needed depth at those positions with good players. And then linebacker is the easiest position to recruit for us. And when you look at Devin Kafusi, Jeremiah Iramia, Will Sedgwick, and then probably the most highly recruited of the entire class, Mika Tafua, who's a fantastic player, then we address linebacker needs. And so I don't think there's a specific need that we did not meet. And so when you consider recruiting class, what happened? Each position I think we recruited well to, not only in terms of quality of player, but depth and number of players that we got at each spot. Hopefully that gives you a quick overview. If you flip to the return missionary slides as well, and I'll be able to take questions after this. Nathan DeBikis, if you remember from a couple of years ago, Thousand Oaks High School, great running back and safety/linebacker. He reminds me a lot of Spencer Hadley. And so if you're looking for a comparison, where he'll end up playing for us, we're not sure. Possibly our big running back spot, but he could play safety or linebacker. Moroni, what we just said, Moroni Lee, because it's hard to pronounce his last name, is Mitch Matthews-ish at wide receiver. Also can play tight end as an extended player. So really athletic. So he's coming back in the type of receivers we like, the tall, thin, athletic mold. Tanner Mangum, as I already mentioned, is back at quarterback. Talon Shumway, a really good outside receiver, long, fast, and an excellent basketball player. Again, nose tackle, defensive end type in Jesse Tamata Tofi, and then Josh Weeks, another wide receiver, 400-meter champion in Arizona. Again, tall range. Again, these are all Mitch Matthews, Nick Kurtz, Cody Hoffman body type players. So really, when I look at the entire class, I feel good that we have reloaded. We have increased not only ability, but fit at BYU, as well as potential for our program to move forward against the schedules that we're going to be playing, which needs more depth, needs athleticism, and consistency through BYU Fit. And that's really a tribute to my coaches. So having said that, I'll take whatever questions that you have. I'm sure there are some, and I'll answer them the best I can.
What do you attribute the success in Texas to?
Guy Holiday. So Guy Holiday has the Dallas area, and we targeted that area specifically for the quality of football. You could say it's the Metroplex, Dallas, Fort Worth, et cetera. That's basically where Coach Holiday's expertise is. And we targeted that not only because that's where he's familiar with, but the quality of football that's played there, the number of signees every year that come out of there. In fact, one of the schools that we took a player from this year, they had 19 Division I players off of one team. And so how they're coached, the quality that they play, and the volume of players with an existing coach that has a base there and is well connected, it's just taken maybe, Coach Holiday's been here, I think this was his second year, so it's just taken a time for the BYU brand to take hold. Then beating Texas helps. And so the way that BYU is perceived in that state, it's as big-time football that's capable of beating anybody. And then when you consider the conservative values of Texas in general as part of the Bible Belt, one of our young men on this particular class, the grandfather's a Baptist preacher and absolutely wanted him in a faith-based environment. And so when you now say great football, a really good recruiter, conservative values, and BYU, starting to make some sense. And so that's my account of what I think is happening.
On the 410-pound guy from Tonga, what is it about him that makes you think that he can be a football player?
It's a great question. I've been asked that, and I've asked myself that a lot. I've known him a total of 15 minutes. So his evaluation was based on Coach Kafusi seeing him play a pickup game of basketball in Tonga 2 years ago. And he just saw a giant body that's light on his feet that could change direction and loved working out and training. And so the day before Motakaya was leaving for his mission, he is a relative to Harvey Longy, same last name. And so I can't trace exactly how that, I don't know the exact relation. But he stops in at BYU before he goes to the MTC the next day. And so I now get a chance to see what Coach Kafusi told me about, and that's something different. So me telling you he's 6'7", 410 pounds is one thing. If you were to see him, that impact was, it's not a fat 410, it's a solid, like, lean isn't the right word. I mean, it is a solid looking, healthy, giant man. And when I shook his hand, his hand went almost up to my elbow, and I was like, how can this guy not be something? I had no intention of offering a scholarship. I was just anxious to meet him and then say, man, maybe after your mission, let's give this football thing a try, and you can walk on. And I've never done anything like this before. I met with him 15 minutes. I've met him in person and seen him 15 minutes in my entire life and have a pickup game of basketball. He's leaving to go on his mission, and I just felt, why not? And so I think he can play something. And so we're going to play him at nose tackle first, and we normally require a two-gap player that can be big enough and strong enough to handle both A-gaps. He might be a three-gap player. Maybe we'll just have him lay sideways right off the snap and just block the whole thing out. There's got to be some way he can do something. And so it'll be fun. And he's sincere, and he's hardworking, and he's humble, and he's so thankful for this opportunity, and and grateful, and what an adventure. So yeah, why not? Yeah.
Sorry, does your experience with Ziggy kind of give you a little more confidence?
It does, because really football is a game and the rules can be learned, and I can't teach 410 pounds. I mean, I can't make someone that, and I can't make him 4'10" and 6'7". He's already 6'7" and 410 pounds, and he's light on his feet, and he's giant, and he works hard. So man, I think if I'm any kind of coach at all, and our staff is, there's got to be something we can teach that guy to do. And Ziggy was the opposite way, 6'6" and 280, running like a 21.9, 200 meters. So how can that not be a football player? So similar thought. Yeah, kind of a stretch in the comparison, but yeah, similar thought.
So you had recruiters go to Tonga 2 years ago, and now you bring him in. Do you expect more of that, sending
Yeah.
yearly or every 2 years?
So we don't think it needs to be yearly, and right now all I'm doing is saying to the rest of college football, watch now, here's flights with full coaching staffs going to, and so, but the story's out because you can't hide 6'7", 4'10", right? So everyone right now is booking flights, I'm sure, or they think I'm crazy, one of those two. But we know the LDS populations in Tonga, in Fiji, in Samoa, and in New Zealand, it is strong. And the type of young people there are so grateful to be given a chance to come to not only the United States, but have an education. It's refreshing in contrast to the normal recruiting star system and et cetera. And I like that. And so, 2 years ago, and it hurt our budget because we're going to all these different countries, and I was kind of called on the carpet afterwards, what happened to our recruiting budget? And I said, well, we went to all these places, and you have to take it from somewhere, and I don't remember where I took the money from. I took it from some part of the program to finance it. But I don't think it's necessary every year. We know exactly at that point who might be the candidates, and then we go back periodically to follow up. In this case, it just so happened where he was coming to go on his mission, and the MTC is here in Provo, so he kind of came to us for a quick stopover to visit the MTC, which is just right down the road, and I saw him. And Coach Kafusi was always hesitant because he's 6'7", 4'10", and never played football. So he told me about him, and he tried to describe him, and he kind of would hint, maybe we ought to take a chance, but he wasn't for job security, never anything else, because he's never played, so the recruiter's not anxious to just jump on the table. And thanks to just timing for his mission and family members that, again, he's related to Harvey Longy, so family members saying, well, Harvey's now at BYU, and this might be something, let's just go meet the coaches. When I saw him, that was a whole different story than reading the book, seeing the picture that's a whole different story. And yeah, they were all shocked that I offered him a scholarship. Coach Kafusi was, I think everybody was, but I'm kind of excited about it. I think it could be fun.
You aware of the reaction on social media?
So I don't understand it. So we're over there at the, we have kind of the draft day thing happening, and they walked me over to a TV screen, and they showed me all these dots, and they tried to explain what's happening, and I didn't really grasp it, but they said there's a lot of interest.
ESPN, we're talking sports all over the country.
Really?
I'm putting out pictures. Darren Rovell from ESPN asked if you guys had a hoax going or something.
Yeah. Man, I wish that you could just see the guy, and then he's so humble and hardworking in this giant body. It's really cool. And the plan wasn't to have it be intended that way. It's just, man, I think he can be, maybe he is Ziggy in some fast. I mean, I just watched the Patriots play the Seahawks, and you've seen Woolfolk, the nose tackle for the Patriots. What if he's that guy? Holy cow, that would be awesome. And yeah, so I think it's worth it.
How would you characterize your relationship with former BYU players and how it pertains to recruiting?
Oh man, I think I can do much better. What I've struggled with for a long time is being the head coach as well as the defensive coordinator, and then having 3 young kids at home, and then trying to have enough time for everything. And then I'm a pretty direct and blunt person, and so, man, one of the first things when I became the head coach, what I realized is there weren't former players around, and that struck me as odd because it's BYU. This was when I was working as an assistant under Coach Croton. And so when I got a chance to be the head coach, it was, man, let's reach out to the former players and have an alumni day. And then the majority of those letters were sent back to me because the addresses hadn't been kept up, and our current organization didn't know where the former players were. And so that's grown steadily over, man, the 11 years now that I've been here. This will be the 11th, and each year the numbers for that event grow to now it's over 1,500. The first one was under 300. And so I've tried to create an event that would facilitate that, at least when I'm not as busy and have more time to balance. But what I realize is that relationships aren't an event. You know, relationships take constant maintenance and care and reaching out and et cetera. And it's not my strength, and I can do a lot better. And I would like to do a lot better. How? I could use certainly more resources, more help within the program and outside the program to do that. Today was one of the most fun days I've had. So it was basically 6 hours where most of the guys that were there presenting the players today were players that I coached. And it was nice to be able to reconnect and see pictures of their kids and just actually not to have so much going where I could just sit down. And I had a chance to speak with every one of them, and it was really good. Not all probably felt appreciated when I coached them, because sometimes as a coach you tell players hard things and they remember it for a long time. Other times they get over it and they end up respecting you for it. And it was fun just to see that of the players that were there today, man, they meant a lot to me at that point, and they do now. It's difficult for me to find enough time to somehow invest in those relationships with Cutter, Breaker, Raider at home, and with Holly and the church callings, and then also being the head coach and defensive coordinator. It's difficult, so I can do much better, and we'll work on a strategy to do that.
Bronco, you mentioned that you thought you were okay at quarterback spot, but you didn't bring in a junior college
Yeah.
guy. So after Taysom, you'll have no experience. Is that a concern at all?
So it's a concern, and I think it's a valid point. It is a concern until I looked at the quality of players that we're bringing. And so because we had Tanner Mangum with us for a spring before his mission, I would love it if he was coming home a hair earlier, but what I saw from him and having one spring under his belt, even though it wasn't game experience, that's a slight bridge. So I would agree with you, Jay. It's not a complete bridge in terms of experience, but what I saw there lent confidence to me. Then what I saw from Bo Hodge, even though he's a high school player, and what he can do and his escapability, that gives you a chance for, to me, when you add escapability, it gives you a chance to possibly not have to execute as quite a high a level and rely so much on precision as sometimes just escapability to move the football. And so possibly it would have been better to maybe have Tanner back right now to go through spring practice. However, from what I saw before when he's getting back, it's going to have to be good enough. Well, for the spring, I think maybe the other thing that I ought to mention is McCoy Hill is here for the spring. So he'll get basically all the reps, because in live work, Taysom is running now and running pretty well. So I'm encouraged. So he might get some work in the spring in terms of 7-on-7 or throwing one-on-ones. We're not going to put him at risk. But McCoy Hill will also be evaluated heavily, and maybe he figures into that mix as well.
What other immediate needs did you need to address for this class, and how well did you do addressing that?
Man, I don't think there is a need, and that maybe is the message for this particular year in press conference, is that I don't think we missed on any needs. I can't, other than maybe the backup quarterback experience, I'm not sure if I can look at any other spot on our team and say, oh, we need one more of this or one more of that. I think we're in pretty good shape with momentum. Fell short in an overtime game and a double overtime game from having 10 wins. Schedule more difficult next year. It'll be the same continuing, but I kind of like the blueprint with the players and the depth and the direction. And so I'm feeling pretty good about just the needs that were met.
Regarding the depth of safety, you were after two junior college guys. One you were able to bring in, one that's kind of out there. Can you maybe talk about what happened with the other guy?
I really can't. Yeah, not by rule. And but Eric Takanaka from Snow, so return punts, I think led junior college in punt returns, return kicks, played corner and safety and nickel. So basically, in one player, you kind of get a lot of volatility, or not valuable experience. And so we have some younger players. The biggest issue will be Michael Davis's development at field corner. That then really decides if we needed a junior college player or not. So we're kind of banking on that happening, and so that would be the best secondary answer, I think. Yeah.
Can you give us some insight, like what the conversations are like when a coach brings in and says, hey, this kid's awesome, we really need to offer him, and then maybe some of the other coaches are like, does it get heated, and are there some...
So our staff gets along really well and is respectful until you bring up something that if this is mainstream recruiting and then you start going to an edge of 6'7", 4'10", or traveling someplace that people normally don't go, or then a position switch that doesn't seem likely, then that intrigues the staff and they start adding comments. For the most part, it stays professional. Sometimes it does get personal. And usually when it goes personal, I just end the conversation because there's no value then. And then I take all that information as the head coach and I'm the tiebreaker. And so I try to construct it to where here's all the dialogue and everyone hears, or everyone has a chance to say what they want to say. And a lot of times I'll be pretty blunt and just say, okay, I don't want the meeting after the meeting now. This meeting is going to be over. And now I don't want another meeting in the hallway unofficially because you haven't said what you want to say, and I'll wait and there's this uncomfortable silence, and then I'll break the tie based on what happens. So rarely does it get personal, but if it does, I stop and then I take over at that point.
National pundits considered the in-state class this year to be the best the state's ever produced by a long shot. How do you feel you did with in-state recruiting?
I think we did really, really well. Any mistakes we made in-state recruiting-wise, and I think this is pretty typical maybe of most places, would be just if I asked a player to come to an additional camp to verify my information and someone else offered first, really the only kids that maybe we wanted and didn't get are ones that I asked or prolonged our offering. Normally we're first on any kid that belongs at BYU. In the event that we held for a little bit longer, those would be the ones that we didn't get. And so I learned quite a bit that way. And I agree that the talent this year was very good. Man, when you start looking at future classes as well, in-state is, the state of Utah is becoming not only more highly recruited, but it is really a good area now, and it's great for us.
Jeremiah Ermia and Lake were two guys that kind of gave you a little bit of a run for your money towards the latter part of the recruiting. Talk about what the staff did and how great of a job Jeff Marsh and your staff did in retaining those recruits.
And so Jeremiah Ermia is a really good player. It's fun because on the recruiting visit, there's kind of a hospitality room that we have as different groups are coordinated where the players they love video games, so that's what they go to. Still don't understand it, but they go to that. But at the same time, what we found is they love to watch each other's highlights. And so here's the class. I don't even know how this started, but I walked in and here's the video game. There's 2 guys doing that, and then there's like 8 guys that are watching each other's highlights, and they're all accessible, right? YouTube or whatever. And I think it's kind of bragging rights. It might have been how that started. Oh, watch me, and then they pull up their thing. So I walked in on Eremia's highlights, and that when you start getting the oohs and ahs from the recruits about one of their peers, that's what was happening. And man, BYU is a unique place. I don't have any other word for it. The academic standards continue to climb. The scrutiny of player conduct off the field continues to be more visible. And so it is a big decision. It's a great decision, but sometimes when it actually comes down to I commit and then realizing what that commitment means, yeah, they might waver a little bit. And then they come visit and it's reaffirmed or the fire's reignited of, oh, this is why I did it. And then having the other guys that they're going to play with see their highlight film and say, oh, you got to come. So we did some, but really he had a lot to do with just really wanting BYU, but also as the recruiting class. They got along really well. Yep.
You have quite a few non-LDS kids in this recruiting class. Was that by design or just the way it worked out?
It wasn't by design. We didn't go looking for a specific number or a specific ratio. What I did highlight or emphasize is a higher qualification academically. And so we just then went, who will fit at BYU that's a really good player that also is a very good student? And it just so happened this particular year and in the Dallas area, it ended up being kind of from there. And so it really wasn't a targeted thing. But man, the evaluation and the standards and the scrutiny from our staff to these kids and vice versa was in place maybe even at a higher level than it's ever been. And there were some amazing young people. And when you start to learn their stories, you'll hear and see that. But I visited with each one in their home with this lens of, do they belong at BYU and do they want to be here and why? And football isn't enough. I have learned that over my 10 years at BYU. But there has to be either academics or faith or something else in addition to football for them to have a really fulfilling experience. And it just happened where it surprised me. But kind of this combination of conservative values in Texas with the biblical belt kind of thing and good football, maybe that's a future thing or not. Maybe it's just not a one-year phenomenon. Hard to say right now.
You made that late run on a bunch of offensive linemen. Was there a reason you guys made that late run at them?
Yeah, we were counting on a couple that we didn't get. And so we as any staff does, there's kind of a hierarchy and a need-based, and you're one of the schools they're considering, and sometimes you think you're in better shape than you're not. And if you don't get one or two, then, man, you can't wait to get the next guy. We're just lucky that we had some others we couldn't wait to get to, because you always feel bad because you can't take them all. And sometimes, who knows, we're not perfect, but sometimes the ones that you get to are better than the ones that you didn't get. And so I think that's the case, but that's why that happened.
Bronco, there was a 5-star local LDS player. Can you clear up, he says you didn't offer him, can you clear up what happened there?
Number one, I'm not sure if I can talk about it legally or compliance-wise, but I guess I'll answer the question and just hope I'm right. We always start Instate, and we evaluate and we do that based on the needs we have and the positions that we're having kids looked at in relation to. And sometimes we think it's a great fit, and sometimes we don't. We could be wrong, but no, we didn't offer, and so obviously a really prestigious or well-respected school and schools around the country did, but I trust our evaluation and those that evaluated, and it was thorough, from like beginning to end, and we knew about them probably first and evaluated them the most thorough, and I have to live with what the outcome of that is, but we did know, and I thought we did a great job in our evaluation process, and whether we're right or wrong, I don't know yet. In some ways, I hope we were wrong, and he has a really successful career.
Can you talk about Scott Huntsman? He had offers.
Oh yeah.
And came as a preferred walk-on, and also was pretty instrumental in Charles West and possible future recruits from.
Yeah, so with the player that hasn't signed a letter of intent, I think I'm shaky on that one, so I don't think I ought to talk about that. Maybe later I could, but my internal alarms are going off from my knowledge of the rules, so I better just say no, not because I'm trying to avoid it, but I think compliance-wise, I can't do that.
Gary Patterson, TCU did a great job of bringing specific recruits and then molding them to specific positions. Do you see anybody in your class now that might be the case for you?
The first guy that comes to mind is Micah Simon. Again, he's a quarterback from high school, but we think he's a receiver. And so he would jump right to the top of the list. That would be the only one possibly other than Motakaya, who if he's not a nose tackle, maybe he's a guard, but he hasn't ever played before, so we don't know what we're molding him into. I don't see anyone else that we're looking for a projection, or he might be something else.
In the past, you've seen that running backs, the bigger backs that you brought in, but you're bringing more of a smaller, quicker backs. Talk about maybe the philosophy there.
Just depth. So we're going to lose Jamal, and so we have up to 4 players slotted at our big back in depth and moving forward, not as many at our speed back. So it wasn't a shift in philosophy, it was just a position need. And we consider big back and our speed back 2 different spots.
By my count, I saw that there's 23 players in this class. Are you going to fill this out and get to 25 with maybe graduate transfers?
No, so we will end up, as I do every year, there's a pretty standard philosophy for most coaches where you actually end up over-signing what you have available. At BYU, that's always the case because of possible attrition, either through missions, desire not to play anymore, sometimes standards violations that cost eligibility. And so I'm comfortable with where we are. And again, in almost every year, including this year, we'll be over what we really have available.
You had an assistant coach and 2 graduate assistants rapping about recruits. Was that your idea? Can we expect you to be doing some raps?
No, so, man. So I leave the recruiting presentation area, walking down the hall, and I hear this music going, and next thing I know, they say, "Hey, come in here." We'll do the whole staff. I wasn't really sure what I was doing until the music started going, and then bodies start moving, and next thing I know, I'm moving, and it was fun. not planned, completely spontaneous, and it's been a long, hard, and good experience from the season all the way through signing day, and I think it was just coaches so relieved and glad to have that phase finished and be able to go now. I think they were celebrating the chance of the work they had done, but also now getting a break for the long weekend and just having fun together. And yeah, so I can't say I didn't like it. It was kind of fun. Yeah, I'm not sure how it looked, but I guess I'll read about that or hear about it soon. Yeah.
Can you talk about Squally Canada?
2 more questions.
Can you talk about Squally Canada and how you guys found out about him and got him in school at BYU?
I'll tell you what I can remember. I believe he was released from Washington State and contacted us, is what I think happened. I don't remember exactly. We then looked at his high school film, and I thought he was a good player. And he was looking, and his dad was looking for a different environment for him, and we had a need. And so he came on his visit, was educated really about what BYU was. And normally, with transfers, I try to scare them in terms of, wait, do you know what you're getting into? This is the most religious school. This is, these are the standards. And he and his dad just seemed to want that. And so I listened to that intently, and then I looked at the film, and I looked at our need, and it just seemed to work. So I took a chance. And so again, he won't be eligible for competition this first year, which again is a risk, because most of the time, if a player comes and it's not necessarily a traditional BYU student, the faster they play, the better they like it. And so this is more risk because he has to wait for a while. But even having said that, it seemed like this is where he wanted to be, and so I was convinced. 1 more question.
In talking with these players, was there a theme that you kept hearing from them as to why BYU is the right place?
Yeah, there was. And I want to make 1 more comment as I'm just thinking about that. It's all... And it isn't only this year. So as I sit in my office and I always talk to the parents, and so at the end of the visit and the young person, I always say, okay, now tell me what it was like for you. And if there was a hidden camera in the corner of my office over the past 10 years, not just this year, there's one theme that jumps out every time. And same as this year. So in specifics to this year, it was the people. So they keep saying it's the people. And I say, what do you mean by the people? And so they talk about our players first, on how nice they are treating these recruits, meaning that sometimes when they visit programs, and I've been there, there's kind of this, here's the young recruits, fresh, young puppy-ish, and here's the veteran, and there's kind of this appearance this way. And that seems to be different. And what they do with our recruits, there's board games and charades, and I don't want to make it sound Pollyanna-ish, but just the things they do that were different. And that was kind of refreshing. So they talk about the people, meaning our players. Then they talk about the people that they meet on campus, and they talk about the people on our staff. And so take out football, take out academics, take out faith. Really what captures the hearts of the parents is they think they're going to be at a place where they're surrounded by really good people. And that was the same this year. And I lost my train of thought. One last thought. Most of our recruiting every year is, most of the commitments, that's not 100%, but most are done before the season even starts. So there isn't much drama usually with the true traditional signing day and which hat someone pulls out or puts on. But I wanted to share one story in particular because of the impact it's had on me. And so whether it has that on you or not, this does not mean more valuable. This just means a story that I wanted to say in terms of the type of kids I'm looking for. Maybe 2 stories. So I visit a young man in Hawaii named Mika Tafua, highly recruited, and you'll be able to research and know his visits and offers really easily. And so I'm visiting with him in his home, and so he gets up each morning at 4:30, and then goes to seminary at 5 to 6, and then either drives or catches a bus to Kamehameha High School, which is driving is about an hour, bus is about an hour and a half, to then get to school. So goes to school, then practices after school, right, and then et cetera, and then basically returns home by about 8. And then does that every single day. So if you're talking 4:30 wake up, back home at about 8, and then you're saying, man, who do I want to coach? And he's a good player, so I'm not going to say that had nothing to do with it, because that had a lot to do with it. And then his mom is raising him, and the sacrifice she was making from the family and for Mika to attend this really quality education at Kamehameha when they live in Laie, it was one of the coolest and best stories that I've I've been exposed to see that kind of commitment for a teenage kid to be up that early and staying that late. That to me is BYU. And so I'm looking for those type of kids. And then here's Trevor Brent, who is West Mesquite High School in Texas. And so he is number 4 in his class and basically has offers from Fresno and Boise State and Yale. He's not going to consider other schools unless they're fantastic academically, as he's number 4 in his graduating class currently. Well, so then what I find out is that he plays the violin. He is, I think, chair 1 or the first chair for like the Dallas Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra, not the school band. So he's the number 1 violinist. So he wants like a BYU Yale education, 4 in his class, and then in the meantime he's playing the violin, and so he's on his visit to BYU, and I'm asking him, what about your music career while you're playing football? And he said, well, and I asked him, about what he's going to do, and he said, well, I don't own my violin, I rent it from the school. He's from very humble circumstances, but a fantastic family, and so he's talking to me, well, first I need to get a violin. Does BYU, will they rent me one? And it just took me back that he's accomplished all these things, but so humble and grateful. But those kind of stories to me within this recruiting world, I don't think they're shared enough, and I'm sure other coaches have them, but from this particular year, those kind of stories are what have captivated me, and I want as many of those kids as I can get. And so, thanks for your time.